fired up and ready to go. And we all need a big dose of yes, we can. So what a great way to start this week. So next slide, please. As people are joining Zoom right now, I want to go over the agenda for the evening. And so we are going to start with an introduction to the Bay Area Coalition, who is bringing the speaker to you today, and let you know all about our events and how you can plug in to help Democrats win. I'll then introduce our speaker, Mike Lux, who will lay out his reasoning, just why and how Democrats can win, not only the Senate, but the House. And once he's finished speaking, I will interview him, and we'll follow that up with your questions from the chat. So if you have a burning question, please be certain to put it in chat, and Amy is going to be curating all the questions and asking them for you. So next slide, please. So the Bay Area Coalition is made up of 18 Bay Area grassroots organizations, from Democratic Central Committees to grassroots organizations throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. I know we have people from all over the United States here tonight, so we welcome you, and we are so grateful you are here. Next slide, please. So we hold phone banks every Wednesday and Saturday, and we're calling Arizona in order to get out the vote for the upcoming primary election, which is August 2nd. So our targets are the Arizona State Legislature, Legislative District 2 and Legislative District 4, Senator Kelly's race, and we're also calling Arizona tribal lands. We also make calls into Nevada to support Senator Masto and Governor Sisolak. And last, but definitely not least, we are calling California CD 22 to support Rudy Salas for Congress. So Amy is putting a link in chat right now that you can sign up to join one of these phone banks. If you have never used a link tree before, you just click on the link, and almost all the 18 different organizations that are part of the Bay Area Coalition will be there in the link tree. Now, there are people from all over the United States. We welcome you to just choose any of those organizations and sign up and join our phone bank. If you are also from the Bay Area, choose the organization that you belong to, or you can just randomly choose any organization, but we'd love it if you would sign up for a shift. And if you've never phone banked before, no worries. We have great trainers and coaches to help you. We also offer weekly canvassing into this California Central Valley, and we practice COVID safe door knocking. I urge you to give it a try. It is so much fun to go canvassing and hold real conversations with people in the community. We also have partners who have set up canvassing in Reno, Nevada. And the next event is actually this weekend, July 22nd and 23rd. And on the 22nd, Senator Masto is going to be there to talk to everybody who's helping her keep her Senate seat. Is so important. We also have canvassing available for you in Arizona, and we know how hot it is in Arizona in August, but the canvassing's in Flagstaff, where it's going to be really cool, and that canvassing is August 27th and 28th. And again, Amy is putting those links in chat for you. We have one more speaker series coming up, and Dr. Gabriela Lemos is our next speaker. This is September 20th, same time. same place. Polls are showing that there is a slow drift of the BIPOC community to the Republican Party. And she is going to talk to us about that and help us with messaging so that we can bring the whole community back to our big, wonderful Democratic tent. And last but not least, we are offering a 2-part training on how to talk to voters. And I think it should be renamed How to Listen to Voters. The trainings are July 30th and August 6th. And really, it's not to be missed. So at this point, we're going to stop sharing the screen, and I am going to introduce you to our speaker this evening. Mike Lux is a co-founder of Democracy Partners, a full-service national consulting firm that was launched in 2011. He is the CEO of his own consulting firm, Mike Lux Media. Clients have included some of the most important institutions in the progressive community, including the League of Conservation Voters, Planned Parenthood, Move On, the NAACP Voter Fund, the Center for Community Change, Daily Costs, and Democracy Alliance. He has also been featured on various news outlets, including CNN, MSNBC, and the Thom Hartmann Show, as well as being a frequent front page contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Costs, and Crooks and Liars. Mike served as a senior staffer or as an advisor on 6 different presidential campaigns. He was the national constituency director for the 1992 Clinton campaign, the first Clinton, and the special assistant to the president for public liaisons in the Clinton White House. During his time in the Clinton administration, Mike worked closely with a wide range of constituency groups, from healthcare to budget issues. In the late 1990s, Mike was the senior vice president for political action at People for the American Way and the People for the American Way Foundation. As member of the Obama-Biden transition team in 2008 and 2009, Mike served as liaison to the progressive community. Mike currently serves on the boards of several organizations, including the ARCA Foundation and Netroots Nation, Center for Progressive Leadership, the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center, Progressive Majority, and Women's Voices, Women's Vote. He also served as the chair of the Progressive Congress Action Fund. He founded American Family Voices in the year 2000 and remains chairman of the board. Besides doing all of this, I don't know how he found the time, but he's the author of the widely praised book, The Progressive Revolution: How the Best in America Came to Be. His latest book, How to Democrat in the Age of Trump, was published in 2018. So Mike is a proud native of Lincoln, Nebraska, where most of his family still lives, and he has been happily married to Barbara Lauer for 39 years. So Mike, what an introduction. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Judith. That was the long version of the bio. And
yes,
and people can tell how old I am now. So yeah. So anyway, but thank you very much for the introduction and for the kindness in inviting me to speak. I am. I'll just lay it out there. I'm more of an optimist than most people in even in the party right now, but certainly in the DC punditry. And I have a lot of reasons for that optimism. And just so you know, I'm not always an optimist. I was actually one of the people in 2016 who was telling everybody that Trump was a real threat. And I I was a senior advisor to the DNC for part of that election cycle, and I think, the only one in Hillary's campaign or the DNC who was worried. And maybe that was part of the problem. I don't know. But I feel like we do have a very good chance this year. It's not that there aren't challenges. Of course there are challenges. Of course there are headwinds. But I'll give you what I want to do is give you a realistic sense of what I think the reasons are that we have a real opportunity to win, and then at the end talk about what we need to do that. So I want to start out by pointing out that conventional wisdom and the DC pundits are almost always wrong. Almost always. And I can go back from my own experience. In July of 1992, everybody thought Bill Clinton was going to get smashed. That he was going to finish third to Bush and Perot. And then a couple years later, when we lost the midterms, everybody thought he was a one-term president for sure. But I can also I can talk about closer in on election day in 1998. The pundits were all predicting that the Republicans would pick up 20 to 30 seats. We picked up 4 instead. We netted 4. In 2000, everybody thought George Bush was going to win 52-48. Remember, this is not a ways out. This was on election day. People were predicting his percentage would be 52-48. Gore ended up winning the popular vote, and in fact, winning the presidency had it not been stolen from him. 2007, early 2008, everybody thought Hillary Clinton would be the nominee. That there was no way that that a Black man with a name like Barack Hussein Obama could ever win either the primary or the general election. Proved that wrong. Unfortunately, the conventional wisdom sometimes has worked the other way. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win easily, as I mentioned, and in 2020, nobody, with the possible exception of Joe and Jill Biden, thought he would be the nominee, especially after Iowa and New Hampshire. So I just want to start with that note, because people listen to people on TV. You all are probably political junkies. If you're on this call, you probably listen a lot to Meet the Press, to CNN, to MSNBC, to all these shows. And everybody's always saying, oh, the House is already lost, and, blah, blah, blah. But the pundits are usually wrong, and the facts don't bear it out. I want to mention one thing also, as I'm opening, which is the big thing that the pundits are basing this on is the fact that Joe Biden has a low approval rating. And I want to remind people, we are in a different era of politics right now. We are in a very ahistorical moment, and neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden, nobody in politics is well liked right now by the American voters. The approval ratings for everybody are as low as I've seen them. And I just want to note, elections are about a choice. I refer you to the recent French presidential election. Macron's approval rating the day of the election, according to multiple polls, was around 37%. His approval rating was at 37%, and he won 59-41. Why did he win 59-41? He was running against a terrible human being who French voters understood was a terrible human being. And so when you look at approval ratings, and all of the pundits are like, oh, the approval ratings bad, therefore the Democrats have no chance. It doesn't necessarily work that way. And I'm going to argue there are some other reasons it doesn't work that way. So first I want to talk about polling, and I want to give you all a caveat. on polling. You can't trust polling as a sure thing. You never can. I mean, it's been true. All these examples I've used where the polling was wrong, but even more so now. I mean, polling, in the era of cell phones, you can't rely on it. But it is one bit of information. It's just, you look at how many voters have been registered. You look at, how good organizations are in getting out the vote. You look at, how many people are showing up at rallies. You look at how many volunteers are on the doors. You have to look at all different kinds of factors in politics. So polling's only one, but polling is an important thing to look at, especially to measure where we're at right now, right? Where we're at this moment in the voters' minds. And in the Senate, we are ahead in most of the contested Senate races in the polling, sometimes by considerable margins. We're ahead in Georgia. I've seen one poll that has Warnock up by 4, another that has him up by 5, another that has him up by 10. Kelly is running several points ahead, according to all the polling. Maggie Hassan is running several points ahead, according to all the polling. And the closest race in the public polling is Cortez Masto. So I'm glad to hear that you all are helping her. But even with her problems, she's still running 3 points ahead in that race, according to the latest polling I've seen. So in all of those races, we're holding our own. And in the challenger races where we've got a chance, we're actually in many cases doing even better. Fetterman has a very solid lead right now over Dr. Oz. He's been doing great ads, great communications, great organizing in that campaign. Seen one poll that has him up 9, another poll that has him up 6, another poll that has him up 4. In Wisconsin, the primary has not been settled, but Ron Johnson is losing to all but one of the candidates in the primary, even the lesser known ones. And his approval rating is terrible. His approval rating is, I think, -10 is the last thing I saw. In Ohio, you've all heard about J.D. Vance and the book that he wrote and the Trump endorsement and all of that. Right now, J.D. Vance is running behind Tim Ryan. I saw one poll that had Tim up 3, another poll that had Tim up 10. In North Carolina, Beasley's not doing quite as well, but she's within the margin of error. And some of the polling that I saw that had her down 4 or 5 was taken before Roe v. Wade happened. In Florida, we're down a little bit in Florida, but again, a lot of the polling that's been done was before Roe v. Wade. So there are a lot of races, and I'll give you perhaps the most surprising run. In Missouri, a third-party candidate filed who is a lifelong Republican who clerked for Clarence Thomas, but he is so disgusted by by Greitens, who is the likely nominee for the Missouri Republicans, that he's running a third-party candidate and will probably draw votes away from Greitens. The most likely Democratic candidate to win that primary is a guy by the name of Lucas Kuntz. And in the latest poll of Kuntz versus Greitens, even before the third party guy got in, it was 45-44, dead even. And Kuntz is running a great campaign and he's raised good money. He's got a real shot. So there's some surprising things going on. I'm going to mention one other thing as I make the transition to the House races. There was a special election in Nebraska a couple weeks back. And this is a district I know a lot about. I was born there. This is Lincoln, Nebraska, and the surrounding rural territory. Traditionally, it's been a Republican district. It's been held by the Republicans for a long time because of those rural areas in the district. But in the Lincoln special election, the Democratic candidate had hardly any money. The DCCC didn't spend any money because it was a special, and they didn't want to put money in. She ended up losing that race only 53-47 in a low turnout race. In the fall, when she's able to turn out students at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, she's got a real shot at that thing. There's something happening out there that the pundits are not seeing. I just think there's far more potential than people realize. Let me turn to the House for a second and finish up on the polling stuff. Before the Roe v. Wade decision, we were averaging being about 3 points down in the national generic House poll. When you ask, are you going to vote for a Democratic or Republican for Congress? That's what they mean by the generic poll. They don't. So it's a national poll. Generally, it tells you quite a bit about who's going to win. And we were running about 3 points behind in the national poll. Since Roe v. Wade, there have been 9 generic congressional polls. 5 of the 9 have us up in those polls, ahead of the Republicans. One of the polls has us up 7. Another of the polls has us up 5. All 9 polls, even the ones that show us still a little bit behind, have seen movement toward the Democrats since Roe v. Wade happened. So we are seeing the movement in the poll. We're seeing the other thing that we're seeing when we talk to people in the polling and the focus groups at the doors is the Roe v. Wade decision and what's happened with guns has energized Democrats. And we're now seeing the opposite of what we saw a few months ago, which was that Republicans were a lot more fired up to vote. Now it's actually Democrats who are saying they're more fired up to vote. We have a 3-point lead on enthusiasm right now. Before we had a 15-point deficit on enthusiasm, so that dynamic is changing as well. So again, take polls with a grain of salt. They aren't a sure thing, but they're one indication, and that one indication right now is moving in the right direction. I want to talk about a couple of other things and then close. One is usually when a party is down and is likely to lose, they're down in fundraising as well. The enthusiasm of the average donor online is flat. The big donors are less likely to give because they want to go with the winner. Right now, we are doing extremely well in terms of fundraising compared to a lot of the Republican candidates. Our online donations have not been flat. People have been enthusiastic about giving. There's a lot of excitement, in a lot of these races. People are fired up. A bunch of the Senate candidates I was mentioned, people are loving Fetterman. They're loving some of these candidates in Wisconsin, and the big national sites that do fundraising, like Daily Kos, for example. They're raising all kinds of money for Democratic candidates. So we don't have an enthusiasm gap there, which I also think is a very good sign. And in a lot of these close races, we have outraised the Republicans by a significant amount. One other point I want to make: the January 6th hearings have been dramatically different than, again, the pundits predicted. Going into the January 6th hearings, most people thought they wouldn't make any difference, that people wouldn't watch them, that people wouldn't care, that it wouldn't change anybody's mind. And you heard that a lot on the cable talk shows and the conventional wisdom. But I'm working with and watching a project that is doing polling and focus groups and other kinds of tracking on the January 6th hearings, and far more people have watched than anybody ever thought. Far more people are talking about it on social media than people would have thought, and it's really moving the numbers. I mean, Trump's approval rating has gone down quite starkly since the hearing started. Suspicions about Republicans who are pro-Trump have gone up. So the January 6th dynamic has been more powerful than anybody predicted. So again, it's one more thing. It's not the only thing. It's not the only thing that matters, but there's one more thing that can give us good reasons for hope. I want to just close with this comment. Nothing in politics, not this year, not ever, is a given. Nothing is a sure thing. No election is a sure thing. It depends on what we do and how we respond to the moment. Are there challenges? Is it bad that Joe Biden's approval rating is so low? Is inflation tough on us? Yeah. I mean, there are challenges, but the question is how candidates, a political party, and most importantly, people like yourselves, the volunteers and the online donors, how people respond to those challenges. Do you say, okay, we've got a challenge, we have to figure it out, or do you give up? Nobody on this call has given up, right? I'm getting that impression that you all are not here just to listen to some guy you've never heard of, go on for a while, right? It's all about organizing. If we organize, we win. If we have passion, we win. If we have the right strategy, we win. And that's true this year. It's true every year. We can figure out a way out of to overcome the challenges we have. And let me give you one example: inflation. So inflation there's no doubt inflation is a tough thing. People are discouraged by it. People are down by it. But one of the things that I've been focused on in this election cycle is I've been doing a lot of polling and focus groups of working class voters who are most impacted by inflation. And I will tell you, they are much more likely to blame big businesses that they think are price gouging and profiteering than they are to blame Joe Biden. Now, do they wish that Joe Biden had fixed the inflation problem? Yeah. Are they in a bad mood because of inflation? Yeah. But when you ask them, what do you think is the most responsible for inflation? Who do you think is most responsible for inflation? The first thing out of their mouth is corporate CEOs who are jacking up prices on us, who are making big money on inflation. That is a powerful message. And one of the things that I am a big advocate of is engaging. We should not run away from issues that are tough for us. We should do just the opposite. We should lean in and push back and engage people and talk about, look, inflation's a big problem. Did you see that 28 cents on every dollar is now going into big oil's pocket? 28 cents of every dollar that we pay in gasoline is a profit, not a revenue, a net profit for the oil companies. Food companies have been making the biggest profits they've ever made. The shipping companies have made 9 times as much profit in 2021 as they did in 2020. They're taking advantage. These companies are taking advantage of the problems. They're taking advantage of the war in Ukraine. They're taking advantage of the supply side stuff, and they're saying, "Hey, we're going to raise our prices," and they're bragging about it to their shareholders. And when you read voters, those quotes of the CEOs talking to their shareholders about how they're raising prices because nobody's going to blame them because of inflation and how they're making big money off of that. People are outraged. So we can engage on the inflation issue, just like we can engage on these other problems. The other thing I want to say in closing, the work that you all are doing is so important, because the bottom line is Democrats win elections when Democrats turn out the vote. And maybe that's a cliche, I don't know, but it's true. I can tell you that we have won the popular vote in every presidential election since 1992, except for one. 2004, people were still scared about 9/11, and we lost by, as you may remember, just a little bit that year. Every other year, we've won the popular vote since 1992. In Senate races, we've won the popular vote, and the Senate is skewed toward rural and Republican states, which is why it's 50-50. But in terms of the overall popular vote, we've won. We are the majority party in this country. There are more Democrats than there are Republicans. When Democrats turn out to vote, we win elections. So the key thing here is to A, not give up, and B, like, turn out the vote. So much is at stake in this election. Our democracy is at stake in this election.
Mhm.
Abortion rights are at stake in this election. The ability to ever pass gun legislation is at stake in this election. Everything is at stake in this election. So, and we should have a level of enthusiasm and passion that matches the moment. And I believe that's building. I believe that when the election is over, we're going to surprise the hell out of the Republicans and the pundits. It's such an important thing, and your passion and your friends' passion is going to turn this election and win this election. And I couldn't be more excited about the prospects. If we beat the Republicans after all the bullshit that we've all heard for a year and a half about how they're going to kick Biden's ass, they're going to kick the Democrats' ass. If we beat them this time around, we will show that their extremism does not work. We will show that people care about issues like abortion and gun rights and all of the other things on the Democratic agenda. And if we keep the House, which I think is very, very doable, if we keep the House and we add 2 more seats in the Senate, we'll be able to pass a lot of legislation, because 48 senators right now are in favor of doing something about the filibuster, to change the rules on the filibuster. We need 2 more senators who will say that. And once we do, then we can we can codify Roe v. Wade. We can, end the ability to buy AR-15s. There's so many things that we can do if we add 2 more senators. We have the ability to do that. We've got some great candidates, and I think I really think we can and will win this election. So I am more of an optimist than a lot of people. There'll be people who disagree with that, but that's my view right now, and I'll stop there, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Wow. You got me going. You got me all fired up. I do have a couple questions for you, though. So you were talking about the message that, corporate greed, price gouging. So Republicans have that vast echo chamber with Fox News, and Democrats really don't have that. So how do we get that message out? What are ways that work?
That is a great question. It's a central question, actually, because the media landscape right now favors the Republicans. There's no doubt about it. Fox News is the biggest cable news channel, talk radio, they tend to dominate. So it's tough. But there's a lot that we can do. One is that there's a lot of online communications that we can do, and we do have some of the biggest online networks. I don't know how many of you follow Occupy Democrats. It's a Facebook page that some friends of mine set up several years ago. They have, I think it's now more than 16 million followers.
Wow.
It's the biggest Facebook page in the world, according to the New York Times. Definitely the biggest Facebook page in the country. And they have built, and we did this actually during the Biden campaign, and I helped with this project, but we built a network of the big progressive Facebook pages that would amplify each other's content about Joe Biden in that case. And I think it was about a dozen different Facebook pages, all of which had over 1 million followers. And every time we wanted to move a message, we would move it out through this whole network of Facebook pages. And it resulted in, I mean, the way algorithms work on Facebook, they do a lot of bad things, but the way they work on politics is if you get a bunch of different big pages all echoing something, it moves it, all around. And the numbers we were getting were extraordinary. We're doing the same thing this year in congressional and Senate races, and I'm very excited about that project. And then sort of you go at the big national level, but then other things that are happening. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is that if there's a friend of mine who I think is one of the most brilliant people I know, who is setting up a series of actually very small Facebook pages, like the Bowlers League of Southeast Wisconsin, right? And the Motorcycle Club of Northeast Michigan. And like all these very small, very specific regional Facebook pages that draw people in because of their interest in those topics. And then he quietly, subtly starts moving political discussion into these Facebook pages. It doesn't start out being an obvious Democratic page, but he just keeps, he'll move. There'll be a great article about something Biden has done about pensions, for example, and he'll move that through. So projects like that. There's another guy that I know that is building out a list of local, some people call them micro influencers, but the folks in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who have 500 friends on Facebook, and who are Democrats, right? And who are willing to carry messages to their friends. You build enough of those folks, and you start to get some very big numbers. So there's a lot that can be done online. There's a lot that can be done. People really pay attention to local news, and it's easier to get on local news. There's a lot of problems with local newspapers. There's less of them now. There's less reporters now, but they still exist, and it's easier to get on a local newspaper than it is, to make an obvious point, in the big city newspapers or the New York Times. But people pay attention to that stuff. People, in these focus groups that I've been doing, people are so cynical about national media. In fact, they refer to it as, oh, that's the corporate media. They have their point of view. They have something they're pushing. They don't trust any of it, including, by the way, Fox News. They don't have any more trust for Fox News because they know how biased they are. These are the swing voters, not the Trump maniacs. But they really pay attention to what's going on at the local level. And if somebody does an event where they're talking about an issue, and they hear about it on the local news, that really matters to folks. So the final thing I would say is There is nothing better in the world for getting our message out than door knocking. You talked about the heat, but I will tell you, I mean, and I'm a person who has door knocked every single election year in my neighborhood or other people's neighborhoods since I was about 10 years old. I started going out with my dad, when I was 10 years old. There is nothing better for communicating with people than a nice person who knocks on their door and talks about issues and why politics matters and why it's important to get out and vote. That stuff really matters, and it breaks through. You make that personal connection, and it breaks through.
Excuse me, Mike and Judith, I just thought I'd report that we have over 20 questions and we have less than 20 minutes that remain.
Okay, I just have one more question and then we'll get to the audience questions. Okay, thank you. So there is a changing demographic in Democratic voters, and I've been reading a lot about the seismic shift now, and that Democrats are now the party of the white college educated voter, and there's a decreasing presence of working class and Latino voters. So can you speak a little bit about that and what Democrats can do to reach working class communities? And as soon as you finish that, we'll switch to Amy and all the other.
Yeah. So the reason I'm so focused on working class voters of all races is because that is the most urgent thing that we have to do. And I've got so much polling information, focus group information, voter file information that I could regale you all with. I could also send you a report that I did that was called Factory Towns. And the bottom line is working class voters respond first and foremost to economic issues. Here's the thing about working class voters, and again, of all races, they are not enthusiastic about Democrats, but they also are not enthusiastic about Republicans. They think that their worst enemy, the people who have the lowest approval rating among these voters, are big corporations and big corporate CEOs. And they think Republicans are in bed with big corporations and big CEOs. Yeah. And so they are open to a message from Democrats if they're willing to deliver it on just sort of basic economic issues. Who is going to bring jobs home, right, to America? Who is going to stop corporations from stealing their pensions? Who is going to help them with childcare costs, since the companies aren't doing that? Who's going to stop companies from raising drug prices, the prescription drug companies? Who's going to stop the price gouging of the oil companies and the food companies? Those are messages that people respond to, of all races. And I think they're a very powerful message. Sometimes Democrats get nervous about saying that stuff because, well, some of their big donors don't like them saying that stuff, right? But I think if we can keep the party focused on those kinds of messages, we can make a difference. The other thing I want to say is, I think reporters are hyping what you're talking about a little bit. I mean, it's an issue, it's a problem, but more so with white working class folks. Latinos are shifting away from us in Florida because a lot of folks are immigrants from countries where they're, so they respond to messages like Venezuelan Americans respond to messages about socialism. Cuban Americans respond to messages where they call the Democrats socialist. And it's happening a little bit as well in Texas. The Republicans are doing a very good job, of working on Latino voters there. But in Arizona, in Nevada, in Colorado, in a lot of other places, we haven't lost very many Latino voters, according to the latest polling that I've seen. And among African-American voters, we have a problem with younger African-American men who are, again, most affected by the economic issues, which is why I think that an economic message really works. But for the most part, African-American voters are staying loyal to the party.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. All right, Amy, you are on.
Thank you, Judith. Just know that a lot of people would like to have this recording, so you'll let people know how to get it. And Mike, you'll work with Judith. Anita wants to get, she also wants to make sure the volunteer group she works with can listen to this. But Mike, where can we get these talking points? From Deborah, and Nancy wants to know if you could share the link to the polls, especially to the swing and enthusiasm. And Mary Claire wants to know, can we get some of those quotes from the CEOs bragging to their shareholders about their profits and not being blamed for high prices, because people will blame it on inflation. And I've saved this so Judith can connect with you about that. But moving on. So
Let me just dive in really quickly too. We will send a follow-up with the recording and links to all these things.
Yeah,
great.
and I'll supply links where I can. The other thing I wanted to say is me and a partner of mine put together I didn't want to show it here because in talking with Judith, we decided just talking was better. But we have kind of a lengthy PowerPoint that I can send to people so that you can look at the slides with a lot of these numbers in it and a lot of the information. And I'm writing a memo this week that is sort of a why and how we can win memo. And when I get that done, I'll send that as well.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to, there were a couple questions about the January 6th committee, but, and since you mentioned it, we can come back to that. What is the effect of the Roe decision? Will it not also get more evangelicals and Latino Catholics to turn out for the Republicans? And in which winnable House districts are we going to have the toughest fights? So, a minute to respond. That's a long question, right? The effect of the Roe decision, will it not get out more evangelicals and Latino Catholics for the Republicans?
Yeah, on that one, I don't think it will. And even if it does, I mean, most of those folks are already pretty locked into the Republican Party and, relatively likely to vote. So I don't think that we'll turn that many more of them out. And just in terms of net, we will net out big in terms of who turns out based on Roe. It will help us turn out young women voters, especially who are one of our biggest, most faithful groups of voters are young women. And they are also very tough to get out to vote in the midterm elections. I think it will really help with them. I think it will really help. Actually, I think it will help a lot with African American and Latino women, because they are the ones who know that, if anybody's going to get, get screwed by this decision, it's them. And the African American women that I'm talking to say it is a huge turnout boost for African American women. Latinos are more complicated, but being Catholic is not an indication of being more anti-abortion.
Okay.
So I don't think it will net out badly. I think it will net out very well for us.
This one is linked because someone wants to know, how do we talk to non-white evangelical voters? How do we not isolate Christian fundamentalist voters?
Yeah, it's an important question because a lot of non-white voters are Christian evangelicals. I think mostly it's a matter of respect. I think we have to avoid looking down on people and talking down to people. We have to avoid doing the eye roll thing when people, talk to us about their faith. I think it helps if you can, if you can quote the Bible, and if you know the Bible, there's a lot of great, very, very liberal quotes in the Bible. And I say this as the grandson, son, and brother of Methodist ministers. My grandfather was a Methodist minister, my dad, my brother. So I knew all the Bible stuff before I knew all the politics stuff. And there are so many great Bible quotes that can be used if you want to engage people in that way. But mostly I think it's about respect. You know, I think a lot of evangelicals of all races feel like democratic liberals, urban liberals, whatever you want to call it, don't respect them, don't value what they value. And I think you just have to relate to people in a way that's respectful, whatever your own beliefs are.
Thank you. Moises wants to know about working class communities of color that are drifting to the Republican side. What do these voters in the Latino, Black, Asian, and immigrant communities hope to find with the Republicans that they're not finding with the Democrats?
Again, the biggest thing is economics. The perception by those voters who are drifting to the Republicans is that Republicans know how to manage the economy. They know how to create jobs. They know how to keep prices down. And they were, I thought it was a big mistake of the Biden campaign in 2020 to not talk very much about the economy, because Trump talked about it all the time. Trump was saying every day, Trump was talking about everything I did for the economy and all the jobs I created, and blah blah blah. And the fact that we didn't talk about it as much made people think that we didn't care about the economy as much.
Sounds like there's a message there, because there are a number of questions on the economy. Is talk about it, be out there. And I mean, we as individual groups can work on the message, and what you're going to send us can help us with that. Now, the next question is a numbers crunching one. So you're going to follow it because I can't. It says, it sounds like the numbers don't add up though. 538 says we would have to win more than all of the races we are favored to win and all of the toss-ups. We would have to get some lean Republican seats too. There just aren't a lot of competitive seats. How do we do that?
Well, so 538, and they've admitted this, by the way, 538 has a very, very long-term model so they average out polls in races around the country, as well as the national generic poll. They average those out over a long period of time. So their polling model does not reflect very much at all of the movement since Roe versus Wade, for example. And they wrote a column on that a few days ago that just said, you know what, our model is slower to change than other models, and we see the movement too since Roe versus Wade, but it's not yet reflected in our models because their models move so slow. They have polling averages that date back months, right? So number one, that. Number two, I think that you build in when you're a modeling firm like 538, you build in assumptions that where you base a lot of things on past performance. And the argument that I'm making is that we need to take past performance with a grain of salt. Historically, a president's party doesn't do well in the midterms because our voters are not as motivated to vote. Oh, we've got the presidency, we don't need to worry about voting. And so, which is why president's party doesn't tend to do as well in the midterms. My belief is that models like that don't reflect the increased passion, the increased enthusiasm, the increased focus on January 6th, on abortion rights, on gun safety, and that's why that model is a little flawed. I also don't accept some of their premises on some of those races.
Great. It sounds like we really do need to hone our messages. I'm going to just move to the last questions I've grouped under next steps. So you talked about the passion. Joan says, even in Kentucky, we are not giving up. Charles Booker is going to beat Paul Rand by outworking, out-organizing, and connecting with regular Kentuckians who are tired of being left behind. And then the next person says, what are the most effective actions I can take? And someone else wants to know, could you speak to the impact of postcards, letters to voters written by volunteers? Does this improve the turnout, or go ahead?
Yes, to the last one, it does improve the turnout. There's a lot of different turnout techniques. I think postcards, notes to folks is a good one. If I could magically get the people writing the letters to go to that state and door knock, I would definitely do that, because I think door knocking is a lot more effective than postcards. But if you can't leave your house, but what you can do is write those notes, I absolutely think it's worth doing.
Awesome.
And in terms of the Booker race, he's a great candidate. Kentucky is a tough state. It's one of the 10 toughest states in the country right now. And on the last two elections against McConnell, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out ways to chip away at McConnell, and we did for a while, but people came back to him. So it's a very tough state, but man, I think Booker is a great candidate. He's one of those young, appealing guys who's got a message that's very motivating, very inspirational. So I think he's great. There was a middle question in there someplace that I think
I'm going to keep on plowing ahead so I can
Okay.
get the majority of these, but you just spoke about the young people with Booker. Benai wants to know, how can we reach young people so they know their votes will count? Just one second. And someone else wants to know the best activist actions during the summer, voter fatigue decay. And I think you actually spoke about knocking on doors and canvassing. Someone else asked about the Freedom to Vote Act. Would that make a difference? Can we do mid-cycle redistricting to undo gerrymandering? And how do we protect against laws in states that can throw out election results? So we're talking about the young people, the best actions during the summer, and then the Freedom of Vote Act and laws, anti-election fairness laws.
So it is theoretically possible to redistrict in the middle of a cycle, but very, very rarely done. And it's not going to happen this election. I just don't see that in the cards in any state because the folks who made the districts are still in charge. There's nothing that's changed. And in terms of the freedom to vote, I don't think that's going to get passed because Manchin and Sinema won't move on the filibuster. But related to the young people, I think that part of the issue we have in politics is people don't know civics, right? And they don't pay attention to how things actually get done. Politics. If we get 2 more Democrats in the Senate and we keep the House, we will suddenly be able to pass a whole lot of legislation that we can't pass now. 2 more Democrats in the Senate. That's what it will take, because we have 2 Democrats out of 50 who will not vote to change the filibuster. And so that, I think, talking to young people about we're not that far away from being able to do some really important things like codify Roe, like banning AR-15s, right? We are not that far away. And I think that's big motivator. And in terms of most important things in the summer, besides the door knocking, which I love, I want to remind people, every single person on this call is your own media organization, right? You all are your own miniature newspaper, video production center. You can move you can move information out to everybody that you know. You know, whether they're a young person you're trying to turn out, or a friend of yours who's somewhere in the middle and not sure how they're going to vote, you can move information to everybody that you know. Every time you see a good newspaper article, you can move that out to everybody that you know on Facebook or by Twitter or by Instagram. Every time you see a great video, you can move that out to the people you know. And so I really want to encourage people to think in terms of, you're a media company all by yourself. You are a media company. And I think we have to get into the mode of sharing with our friends how important politics is, why it matters, why you can make a difference. And I think if we share that with people, hopefully in a not too obnoxious way, that we can really can make a difference in these elections.
Thank you. Before I pass it back to Judith, because it's 6:01, I think 6:02. How about a prediction in CA 45 between Jay Chen and Michelle Steele at the House level? Do you think Jay can win?
You know, I don't know. I think Jay can win. You know, it's a tough race. I don't know enough about the specific dynamics in that race to give a good answer, though.
Okay.
But it's not one that I'm pessimistic about.
Thank you, Judith.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mike. This was just what everybody needed to hear. Really appreciate it. I do want to promise everyone we will be sending this information, including the slides Mike graciously promised to us. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to the team, and a special thanks to you, Mike. I think we all feel that coat of gloom and doom that we've been carrying for so long has been removed, and we are free. We know that we're going to be able to win in 2022. So thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank all of you, not just for, you know, inviting me, but it's you are the folks who make me hopeful. The fact that there's so many people that would turn out on a Monday night, you know, to hear somebody they don't know much about talk about politics. I mean, you are the reason. You and you know, people like you all over the country are the reason that we've got a great chance to win this election. It's your passion, it's your enthusiasm that's going to carry this thing forward to victory. So I want to thank everybody on the call profoundly for everything you're going to do.
Great. Thank you very much.